The text came 5 minutes before the ceremony was to begin. My phone lit up in the dim light of St. Patrick's Cathedral in Boston, and the name on the screen made my stomach drop. It was Vivian. Andrea, I cannot go through with this. I still love you. Meet me at the back door right now, or I will regret it for the rest of my life. I sat frozen in the 5th row dressed in a simple black dress as an old college friend while 200 guests in elegant suits and dresses waited for the perfect wedding of Vivian Harrington to David Thompson. The organ music swelled and the bridesmaids started down the aisle, but I could not breathe. Before anyone noticed, I slipped out of my pew and moved quickly along the side wall toward the rear exit, heart hammering in my chest. Then the front doors flew open, and there she was, Vivian, in her long white gown, veil crooked and train dragging as she ran not toward the altar, but straight toward me. Her eyes locked on mine, full of terror and relief at the same time. The entire hall erupted. Her mother screamed from the front pew, "What is happening?" Vivian stopped this instant while her father stood up red-faced, yelling after her, and guests turned in their seats gasping and whispering loudly. David, the groom, stood at the altar, mouth open in disbelief as the priest looked lost. I reached Vivian just as her brother tried to grab her arm from the side aisle. "Let her go," I said, pushing him back harder than I meant to. She clutched my hand tight, and we ran together out the heavy wooden door into the cool October air of Boston, the shouts and footsteps following us like thunder. We jumped into my car parked 2 blocks away for what I had thought would be a quiet exit if the day became too painful. As I drove away fast, Vivian collapsed against the seat, sobbing so hard her shoulders shook. "I had to do it, Andrea," she whispered between breaths. I stood in that dressing room looking at myself in the mirror, and realized I could not lie anymore, not in front of God, not in front of my family, and not in front of the woman I never stopped loving. Her conservative family had pushed this marriage for months, telling her it was the only way to fix the shame of our past, the only way to keep their respect and the family business intact. They had said our love was a mistake, a phase that would destroy everything they built. Now, as we sped toward the outskirts of the city, her phone kept buzzing with calls from her mother, her father, her sister, all demanding she come back and fix this mess. I pulled into a small quiet motel on the highway edge, and we checked in under a fake name, paying cash, so no one could trace us right away. In the plain room with its faded curtains and single bed, Vivian sat on the edge, hugging her knees, still in her wedding dress, looking small and broken. I sat beside her and held her hand, not knowing what to say, but knowing everything at once. 2 years ago she had chosen them over me in a hotel room very much like this one, telling me through tears that family was everything and she could not lose them. Now here she was choosing me, and the cost was already starting to show in the way her hands trembled. "Tell me everything," I said softly, "because I need to understand why today of all days." She nodded and started to speak, her voice cracking as the memories flooded back, taking us both to the beginning. It was our sophomore year at Boston University, when we first met in a late-night study group for literature class. The room was crowded with tired students, but when she walked in with her long dark hair and confident smile, something shifted inside me. She sat next to me by chance and asked for a pen with that warm laugh that would later become my favorite sound in the world. After class we grabbed coffee at the campus cafe, talking for hours about books and dreams, and how hard it was to figure out who we were. That night I could not stop thinking about her, and when she texted me the next day to meet again, I knew I was in trouble. Our first real date was a walk along the Charles River where we shared secrets under the stars. She told me about her strict parents who expected her to marry well and carry on the family name. I told her about my own quiet life raised by a single mom who just wanted me to be happy. When our hands brushed, it felt like electricity, and when she leaned in to kiss me under the bridge, I knew this was something real, something worth fighting for. We kept it secret at first, stealing moments in empty classrooms and late-night drives because the world was not ready and her family would never understand. Every touch, every whispered "I love you" came with the weight of what we might lose, but also with a joy so deep it made the hiding feel worth it. She would sneak into my dorm after midnight, and we would lie on my small bed talking until dawn about the future we wanted together. I remember the night she first said she could see us building a life away from all the pressure, a small apartment in the city, maybe adopting a dog, and just being free. Those words kept me going through the fear. But even then the cracks were there. She would get quiet after calls from home, and I could see the guilt eating at her. Still we chose each day to keep going, to keep loving, because the alternative was unimaginable. As she spoke in the motel room, her eyes distant with the memory, I felt the same pull, the same fear, and the same hope that had defined us from the start. Her phone rang again, and this time she looked at me with fresh tears. They are never going to forgive me, Andrea, but I cannot go back to pretending. I squeezed her hand, knowing the price we were both about to pay was only beginning. We stayed in that motel room for hours that first night after the wedding chaos, talking until our voices grew hoarse. Vivian changed out of the wedding gown into the spare clothes I had in my car, and we ordered pizza like old times, trying to pretend for a moment that the world outside did not exist. But every buzz of her phone reminded us of the reality. Her family had already posted a vague statement on social media about a family emergency, and the gossip was spreading fast through their circle. I watched her read the messages from her sister calling her selfish and from her father demanding she return home immediately to explain herself. The guilt in her eyes was the same I had seen years ago, and it pulled me back into the past again. After our first few months together in college, the happiness started to feel heavier. We had been so careful, but one weekend her parents came to visit unexpectedly, and we almost got caught when her roommate saw us holding hands in the hallway. We laughed it off as close friendship, but the fear stayed with us. That summer we rented a small cabin up in New Hampshire for a week away from everyone. It was the first time we could be completely ourselves, no hiding, no quick glances, no excuses. We hiked during the day, cooked simple meals at night, and talked about coming out one day when we were stronger. On the last night we sat by the lake, and she promised me that no matter what her family said, she would never let them come between us. I believed her because her love felt unbreakable then. Back at school in the fall, things got harder. Her grades slipped because she was distracted by the double life, and I started skipping social events to spend time with her. Our friends noticed we were always together, and a few asked questions, but we denied everything. The price was small at first: lost sleep, lost time with others, but it was worth it for the way she looked at me when no one else was watching. Then came the holiday break, when she went home to her family's big house in the suburbs and I stayed on campus. The texts from her were shorter, and when she returned after Christmas she was distant. Her mother had asked pointed questions about her single status, and pushed her to attend church events where nice young men were introduced. Vivian told me it was nothing, but I could see the doubt creeping in. Still, we pushed through another semester with secret notes left in each other's lockers and quick kisses in the library stacks. The joy was still there, stronger than the fear most days. One night after a particularly hard exam, we drove to the beach at midnight and danced in the sand to music from my phone. She spun me around laughing and said, "This is what life should always feel like." That memory hit me hard in the motel as she described it again, her voice soft with nostalgia. But the turning point came in spring of junior year when her cousin visited campus for a weekend. We thought we were safe at a small party off campus, but the cousin saw us slip away to a quiet corner for a kiss. She did not say anything right away, but the look she gave us was enough. 2 weeks later, Vivian got a call from her mother in tears, asking if the rumors were true. The confrontation that followed was brutal. Vivian came to my dorm shaking and told me her parents knew, and they were furious. They threatened to stop paying her tuition, to cut her off completely if she did not end it immediately. She cried in my arms that night, saying she loved me, but she could not lose her family. They were all she had. I begged her to choose us, to fight together, but the fear in her eyes was too deep. We spent the next month in secret meetings trying to find a way, but the pressure mounted. Her father flew up to Boston and met her for lunch, telling her that this phase would ruin her future and the family reputation. When she finally broke up with me in a rainy park near campus, she said it was to protect me too. But I knew it was the hardest decision she had ever made, and the one that broke us both. In the motel, she reached that part of the story and stopped, her hands covering her face. "I have regretted that day every single day since," she whispered, "but they made it sound like the only right choice, the moral choice, the one that would save everyone. Now I see how wrong it was and how much it cost me." I pulled her close, letting her cry, because I had cried the same tears for months after that breakup, throwing myself into work and friends trying to forget her smile, her laugh, the way she made me feel seen. The world moved on, but I never fully did. As the night wore on, we talked about the small ways we had tried to stay in touch after the split, occasional likes on social media, but nothing more, until her engagement announcement hit me like a truck. She had chosen David, a safe, respectable man from her church circle, to make her family proud. The invitation came in the mail 6 months later, and against my better judgment I accepted, because part of me needed to see if she was really happy. Now here we were, running from the very wedding I had dreaded. Her phone rang again, and this time it was her mother, leaving a voicemail full of anger and disappointment. Vivian listened, then turned it off, looking at me with new resolve. I am done paying the price for their approval, Andrea. But as she said it, I wondered what price we would both pay now that the truth was out in the open for everyone to judge. Morning light filtered through the thin motel curtains, and Vivian was still asleep beside me, her face peaceful for the first time in what must have been years. I slipped out of bed quietly to check my own phone, and the notifications were overwhelming. News of the wedding chaos had spread online, with blurry photos from guests showing Vivian running, and me pulling her away. Comments ranged from shock to judgment, with some calling it a scandal, and others whispering about the old rumors from college. My own friends had texted asking if I was okay, and one even asked if the stories about us were true. I did not answer any of them yet because the truth was too raw and too complicated to explain in a message. When Vivian woke, she saw the worry on my face and reached for me. "They know everything now," she said quietly, "and there is no going back." We ordered breakfast to the room and sat at the small table talking through the next steps. She decided to turn off her phone for a while to think clearly, and I suggested we drive to a cabin I knew in Vermont that a friend owned and rented out sometimes. It would give us space to figure out the damage and what came next. As we packed the few things we had, the conversation turned back to the months after our breakup, the time when the real cost started to show for both of us. After she left me, I threw myself into finishing college with honors, landing a good job as a graphic designer in the city. On the surface, I looked fine, going on dates with men to try to move on, but every time someone touched me, I compared it to her and the emptiness grew. I started therapy to deal with the loss, but the sessions only made me realize how deeply I had loved her, and how her choice had left a hole nothing could fill. For Vivian, the pressure at home intensified. Her family watched her every move, arranging dates and church activities to keep her on the straight path they demanded. She told me later how she would cry in her childhood bedroom at night, missing me but convincing herself it was for the best. The guilt ate at her until she agreed to date David to make them stop asking questions. He was kind and patient, never pushing, but she felt nothing real for him, only the relief of her parents' smiles when she brought him home. The engagement came after a year, and the wedding planning became a machine that rolled over any remaining doubts she had. She threw herself into the details: the flowers, the dress, the guest list, anything to avoid thinking about the life she had walked away from with me. But the doubts crept in anyway, especially at night when she would dream of our time together and wake up crying. She tried to talk to her sister once about the feelings, but the sister shut it down immediately, calling it confusion from the past and reminding her of the family legacy. That betrayal from someone she trusted hurt almost as much as losing me. As we drove north toward Vermont that afternoon, the story poured out of her in waves, and I shared my side too. The nights I drove past her house just to see if she was okay, the way I avoided places we used to go because the memories were too sharp. The social prejudice we faced even in liberal Boston was real: friends who drifted away when they suspected, coworkers who made jokes about alternative lifestyles. We had paid for our love in silence and isolation long before the wedding day. When we reached the cabin nestled in the woods, we unpacked and built a fire in the fireplace, sitting on the couch with blankets around us. For the first time since the chaos, we allowed ourselves to talk about the future, not just the past. "What if we tried again?" I asked, and she looked at me with hope mixed with fear. "I want that more than anything, but my family will not let go easily, and David deserves an explanation too." The moral weight of what we had done hung between us: the way we had hurt others by running, the way her family now felt betrayed by their own daughter. That night we fell asleep holding each other the way we used to, and it felt like coming home, but I knew the road ahead would test every decision we made. The next morning her sister called from a different number, leaving a message full of anger, accusing me of stealing Vivian away and ruining the family name. The confrontation was only beginning, and the price of choosing love was becoming clearer with every passing hour. The Vermont cabin became our temporary sanctuary, but the outside world refused to stay away. On the third day, reporters started calling my work number, somehow getting hold of it, and asking for comments on the runaway bride story. I ignored them, but the stress was building for both of us. Vivian finally turned her phone back on to call David and explain everything. The conversation was long and painful, with him expressing hurt, but also understanding in a way that made her cry again. He had suspected something was off but never imagined this. She apologized for the pain she caused him and promised to return the ring in person when things calmed. That call was one more cost added to the growing list: the loss of a decent man who did nothing wrong except fall for someone who could not love him back fully. As the days passed, we ventured out for walks in the woods, talking through the moral dilemmas that had defined our relationship from the start. Was it selfish to choose our happiness over family expectations, or was it the only honest path left? Vivian wrestled with the idea that she had been raised to believe duty to family came above all else, and that her love for me went against everything her parents taught her about right and wrong. I shared how I had questioned my own choices too, wondering if I should have walked away sooner to spare her the conflict. The betrayal that hurt her most came from within the family when her sister leaked old photos from college to a gossip site showing us together at a party looking too close for friends. The article exploded online, framing the wedding chaos as the result of a secret affair and painting Vivian as confused and me as the instigator. Her parents called her then, demanding she denounce me publicly and return home for counseling at their church. She refused, and the line went dead with her father's final words, "You are no longer welcome in this house." The disownment hit her like a physical blow, and she spent the afternoon pacing the cabin floor, questioning if she had destroyed everything for a second chance with me. I held her through the tears, reminding her that the prejudice they showed was the real problem, not our love. To distract ourselves, we cooked meals together and watched old movies, the simple acts of normal life we had missed for years. One evening, as the fire crackled, she turned to me and said, "I made the wrong choice back then, Andrea. I let fear decide for me, and it cost me 2 years of living half a life." The awakening in her eyes was real, but it came with scars: the loss of financial support, the judgment from their social circle, the way her career in marketing might suffer if the story followed her. I faced my own losses when my boss called to say clients were pulling out due to the negative attention, and I might need to take a leave. The price was mounting for both of us, but so was the clarity that staying apart had been the greater wrong. We decided to drive back to Boston the next day to face the consequences head on, starting with a meeting with her parents if they would agree. The drive was tense, with Vivian practicing what she would say about her identity, her love, and her refusal to hide anymore. When we arrived at a neutral cafe, her mother showed up alone, looking older and angrier than I remembered. The conversation was a battlefield of words, with accusations of selfishness and sin flying across the table. Vivian stood her ground, explaining the years of internal torment and how the marriage would have been the real betrayal to everyone involved. Her mother left in tears, saying she needed time, but the door was not fully closed. That small crack gave us hope, but the road to reconciliation would be long and filled with more confrontations. Back at my apartment that night, we held each other, knowing the choices we made had changed lives forever, including our own, and the moral questions would follow us for years. Life after the wedding chaos settled into a strange new rhythm in my Boston apartment, where Vivian stayed while we figured out the next chapter. The media attention died down after a week, but the personal fallout continued, with her family sending letters through lawyers about cutting her from the will, and her old friends choosing sides in whispered conversations. I watched her navigate the loss with a strength I had always admired, but the internal conflict still surfaced in quiet moments when she would stare at old family photos and wonder if she had been too harsh in her awakening. We attended a support group for LGBTQ people from conservative backgrounds, and hearing others' stories helped her see she was not alone in the struggle between love and loyalty. One session, a woman shared how coming out had cost her a relationship with her parents for 5 years, but eventually brought healing. Vivian cried afterwards, saying she hoped for the same but feared the damage was too deep. Meanwhile, I dealt with my own guilt over the role I played in the hall that day, wondering if rushing to her had escalated the chaos unnecessarily, or if silence would have caused even greater pain down the line. The betrayal from her sister continued when she posted a public statement distancing the family from the scandal and calling for prayers for Vivian to find her way back to the right path. That post hurt Vivian more than the disownment because it came from someone she had confided in as a child. We spent evenings talking through the moral gray areas. Was it right for her to send the text and upend so many lives, or would staying silent have been the kinder lie? I argued that truth, even when painful, was the only foundation for real change, but she wrestled with the harm to David and her parents. To move forward, we both made practical decisions. She applied for jobs in design firms away from her family connections, and I took on freelance work to cover our bills while my own career stabilized. The small victories felt huge, like the first time she introduced me as her partner to a new colleague without hesitation. Yet the pressure never fully lifted. Her father reached out once via email offering a meeting if she agreed to counseling, but when she insisted I come along, the invitation was withdrawn. The rejection reopened old wounds and led to a night of deep conversation where she admitted the years of hiding had taught her to doubt her own feelings, until the moment in the dressing room when everything became clear. I shared how my decision to attend the wedding had been a test of my own healing, and how seeing her in that gown had nearly broken me until the text arrived like a lifeline. The tension built again when David requested a face-to-face meeting to return personal items and get closure. We met him in a park and the conversation was civil but heavy with his questions about how long the feelings had been there, and why she could not have told him sooner. Vivian took full responsibility without excuses, and he left with a sad but understanding nod wishing her well. That encounter lifted some weight but added to the list of people we had hurt in the process of choosing ourselves. As weeks turned to a month, we started to plan a small trip to New York to visit places from our college days as a way to reclaim positive memories. The night before we left, she turned to me in bed and said, "No matter what comes next, I know this is the choice I should have made years ago, even if the cost is high." Her words carried both hope and the knowledge that the journey was far from over, with more family confrontations likely and society still ready to judge. The moral questions lingered in the air between us, but so did the love that had survived it all. The trip to New York brought a mix of nostalgia and new beginnings as we walked the streets where our story first took root. In Central Park, we sat on the same bench from years ago, and Vivian took my hand saying, "This is where I want to start over, with no secrets and no apologies for who I am." The moment felt like the happy ending we had dreamed of, but reality waited back in Boston with one final confrontation arranged through a neutral family friend. Her parents agreed to meet at their lawyer's office with the condition that I stay outside at first. I waited in the lobby, pacing and replaying every decision that led us here: the choice to run, the choice to fight, the choice to love openly. When Vivian emerged an hour later, her eyes were red but her posture was straight. "They listen," she said, "but they still see it as a failure on their part and mine." No full reconciliation yet, but her mother hugged her at the end, which was more than we expected. The small step forward came at the cost of hearing again how our love challenged their beliefs and values, but Vivian held firm, explaining that true family should want her happiness, not conformity. We drove home in silence, processing the mixed emotions until she broke it with a laugh, saying, "At least now I can breathe without the weight of their expectations crushing me." Over the following months, life stabilized in quiet ways. She found a job at a progressive firm, and I returned to my full-time role, with the scandal fading into background noise. We faced occasional stares and comments from old acquaintances, but each one strengthened our resolve. The betrayals from the past, her sister's distance, her father's silence, became lessons in choosing peace over approval. One evening as we cooked dinner together, she turned to me and asked if I ever regretted the chaos of that day. I told her no, because it led us here to an honest life, even with the scars. The internal conflicts that once tore at her had transformed into a quiet strength, and my own doubts had given way to gratitude for the second chance. Yet the broader questions remained about the right and wrong of it all, the balance between personal truth and the pain caused to others. We talked often about how family pressure and societal prejudice force impossible choices, and how awakening comes with a price tag measured in relationships and reputations. As the year drew to a close, we attended a small gathering with new friends who accepted us without question, and for the first time Vivian spoke openly about our story without shame. The journey had been one of confrontations and trade-offs, trauma and growth, but it had led to a place where love felt worth every difficult step. Looking back at the woman who sent that text 5 minutes before her wedding, I saw not recklessness but courage, the courage to reject a life that would have slowly killed her spirit. The decisions we made carried heavy consequences, but they also brought freedom and authenticity. In the end, when family expectations demand you deny your true self, is fighting for your love an act of courage or selfish destruction of the lives around you?